Thank you for inviting me to speak about political violence today. To learn from January 6, we must understand both that mis- and disinformation are the primary drivers of political violence, and that political violence is not limited to physical attacks, including killings, but also includes the threats, intimidation, and harassment that squelch civic participation and undermine the functioning of our democratic republic. In the years leading up to January 6, conspiracy theories emboldened extremists. The Great Replacement Theory, which posits a conspiracy to replace majority white populations with non-white immigrants, was behind the deadly Unite the Right rally and multiple mass shootings. Conspiracies about Democrats taking away Americans' freedoms were behind attacks on state houses during the pandemic. And by Election Day 2020, President Trump's election fraud conspiracy was well seated in the populace, so that by January 6th, the thousands of people he had summoned to the Capitol were ready and willing to act when he called for them to fight like hell. President Trump's pardons cannot erase what happened on January 6th. His revisionist history is based on more falsehoods: that January 6th was a peaceful protest, that the January 6th defendants were politically persecuted, and that Trump himself was the victim of a weaponized Department of Justice made up of evil people. Add to this the baseless claims of non-citizen voting and pervasive violent crime by immigrants, and the risk of political violence increases despite polls that show that most Americans are firmly against it. Political violence does not have to be physical to cause great damage. Threats against election officials have resulted in the highest recorded rate of turnover in the past quarter century. Elected officials at every level have decided not to run for re-election after threats to themselves and their families. And new research shows that roughly 5.5 million Americans may have not voted in 2024 because of fears of violence. Executive actions in the last year have created a culture of fear and intimidation. The blacklisting of law firms has chilled lawyers from representing people and causes the president opposes. The demands for prosecution of the president's perceived enemies signals that those who challenge him will be punished. The targeting of media organizations risks burying stories about government overreach and failing to fact-check false and misleading statements by government officials. And NSPM 7, the one-sided presidential proclamation directing the federal government to go after those the president characterizes as espousing anti-Americanism, has impacted the crucial work of nonprofits fearful of being subjected to baseless investigations and audits. And there is state-sponsored physical violence as well. ICE and CBP have physically assaulted individuals suspected of being undocumented, as well as protesters, university students, and clergy members, all to instill fear in immigrant communities and to chill First Amendment protected protest. And the federalization and deployment of the National Guard into so-called blue cities attempts to normalize the militarization of the country. We cannot afford to ignore the false narratives that this administration seeks to rely on to suppress voting rights and public protest. Congress must use its authorities to combat disinformation and political violence, whether by private actors or government officials, and Americans must refuse to be silenced or chilled from civic participation. Thank you.
Wait just a second. We have one more thing to share.
We want to say a heartfelt thank you for watching and supporting PBS News.
Without you, we simply wouldn't be able to provide the news and the information that you trust.
So thank you from everybody here at PBS News.
Support journalism you trust. Support PBS News. Donate now, or even better, start a monthly contribution today.